Have you ever wondered how Cain, one of the first sons of Adam and Eve, managed to find a wife and have a child if Adam and Eve were the only parents of humanity? This question may seem like a paradox, but as we delve deeper into the biblical details, fascinating clues emerge that help resolve this apparent enigma. In today's video, we're going to explore this topic, and I'm sure you'll be surprised by the answers. So, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and join me on this journey. The account of the creation of Adam and Eve is a central point in the biblical narrative, symbolizing the beginning of the human race. According to the book of Genesis, God shaped Adam from the dust of the earth and breathed the breath of life into his nostrils. Then he created Eve using one of Adam's ribs, establishing the first marital bond and the origin of humanity. This divine act not only initiated life on earth, but also inaugurated the bond between God and his creation, setting the stage for the unfolding of biblical stories. After being created and established in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve began their family. Among their children were Cain and Abel, two brothers who grew up in an environment still influenced by the purity of the original creation, but who would soon face their first challenges. Cain chose to dedicate himself to agriculture, cultivating the land, while Abel took the path of raising animals, becoming a shepherd. The Bible tells that at a certain point, the two decided to present offerings to God as a way of expressing devotion and gratitude. Cain brought products harvested from the soil, while Abel offered the best of his sheep, with valuable and fat portions. Both brothers offered their gifts sincerely, but Abel's dedication to God stood out for its excellence. However, God accepted Abel's offering with favor, while Cain's did not receive the same recognition. The Bible does not explicitly explain the reason for this distinction, but many interpretations suggest that the difference was related to the attitude and quality of the offerings. Abel gave what was most precious to him, demonstrating genuine commitment, while Cain did not offer something of equal value. The rejection of his offering and the acceptance of Abel's caused Cain to feel deep dissatisfaction and anger. Consumed by frustration and dismay, his anger quickly turned into envy and bitterness toward his brother. God, noticing Cain's disturbed emotional state, gave him an important warning about the imminent danger of his feelings. The Lord warned him that sin was lurking and that he needed to master his emotions to avoid falling into temptation. This divine advice aimed to give Cain a chance to change his path and seek redemption. Driven by jealousy and anger, Cain called Abel to go to the field. In an isolated place, far from anyone else, the tension between the brothers escalated. Overcome with growing rage, Cain attacked Abel fatally, taking his life violently. This tragic act of murder marked the first recorded human death, introducing a new dimension of sin and pain into God's created world. After the murder, God confronted Cain and asked him about the whereabouts of his brother Abel. Trying to cover up his crime, Cain responded indifferently, "I don't know, am I my brother's keeper?" His answer reflected not only an attempt to evade the consequences, but also a lack of remorse and responsibility. Knowing the truth, God announced the repercussions of Cain's actions. He would be cursed and condemned to wander the earth, unable to draw sustenance from it as the soil would no longer yield crops for him. The punishment imposed on Cain was twofold. He would live as a wanderer without a fixed destination, and the earth, which had previously provided him sustenance, would no longer produce as before. Faced with this sentence, Cain expressed despair and fear for the future. He voiced his concern about being condemned to wander without protection, fearing that someone might find him and seek revenge for Abel's death. In response to Cain's fear, God placed a special mark on him. Although the exact meaning of this mark is not detailed in the Bible, its purpose was clear: to protect Cain from anyone who might attempt to avenge Abel's death. This mark ensured that, despite the curse, no one would dare to kill him. After this dialogue with God, Cain left his presence and went to live in the land of Nod, located east of Eden. The Bible then recounts that Cain found his wife, with whom he had a son named Enoch. Additionally, the biblical text mentions that Cain built a city and named it after his son Enoch. This act of founding a city is a significant milestone in history, indicating the beginning of the formation of the first human communities. It is at this point that uncertainties arise. The Bible does not offer specific details about the origin of Cain's wife or how he found her. In verse 17, it is only mentioned that Cain knew his wife. The existence of other human beings during Cain's time, besides Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, is a theory that seeks to explain the gaps in the biblical account and address questions related to population growth at that time. The hypothesis that there could have been other human beings besides Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel during Cain's time is an interpretation that attempts to fill in the gaps left in the biblical narrative, addressing issues related to the growth of humanity's population. Cain's expressed fear of being killed by others, as well as the protective mark God placed on him, raises significant questions about the presence of a larger human population beyond the central family in the story. In Genesis 4 verse 14, Cain expresses his anguish, saying, "Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." This fear is intriguing, as it suggests there were enough people for Cain to worry about being found and punished. In the next verse, the Bible states, "But the Lord said to him, 'Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over.' Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him." These hints help us understand that within the context of the biblical narrative, the earth might already have been inhabited by a larger human group beyond Adam and Eve's family. Cain's fear of being found and God's action to protect him point to the existence of other people besides the central characters, suggesting a significant and dispersed population coexisting with the first members of humanity. One of the less widely accepted theories suggests that, apart from Adam and Eve's descendants, God may have created other groups of human beings independently. Supporters of this view argue that to explain the rapid population growth mentioned in the scriptures, a considerable number of individuals would be needed, which would be difficult to achieve with only the direct descendants of Adam and Eve. This perspective attempts to reconcile the biblical account with archaeological and anthropological findings that indicate the presence of more complex human communities in ancient times. Evidence, such as primitive human dwellings and organized societies, suggest a broader population scenario. However, it is essential to recognize that this theory is speculative and lacks clear support in the scriptures. The Genesis narrative emphasizes the story of Adam and Eve and their descendants, without directly referencing the existence of other human groups at the same time. The biblical text does not provide additional details about the creation of other humans outside of the central family, keeping the story within a more limited and specific context. On the other hand, the most widely accepted hypothesis is that Cain may have married a sister or niece, considering the cultural practices and historical context described in the biblical account. The book of Genesis does not specify that Adam and Eve had only Cain and Abel as children. In fact, in Genesis 4 verse 1, Eve mentions, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man," referring to Cain. The absence of a clear mention of other children between Cain and Abel led various scholars and theologians to speculate that Adam and Eve had a much larger progeny than the text explicitly presents. Considering the cultural and historical context of that era, when large families were common, and the lack of a specific restriction in the scriptures, the possibility arises that Cain may have married a sister or a close relative. This line of interpretation is reinforced by the mention in Genesis 5 verse 4, which states, "After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters." This passage suggests a much broader progeny beyond the children individually mentioned in the scriptures. Therefore, the biblical account does not restrict Adam and Eve's descendants solely to Cain, Abel, and Seth, allowing for a broader understanding of the family's extent. It is important to note that in the absence of a significant population beyond Adam and Eve's family, The hypothesis that Cain married a sister emerges as a plausible explanation for the continuity of the human lineage, considering the cultural and temporal context of the biblical narrative. At that time, marriages between siblings or close relatives were socially accepted and necessary to ensure the expansion of humanity. This interpretation aligns with the biblical setting, which does not present explicit prohibitions against sibling marriages in the early stages of human history. In fact, the Bible presents several examples of unions between close relatives. A significant case is that of Noah's children after the Great Flood. Noah and his wife, along with their sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were the only survivors to repopulate the earth. Under these conditions, Noah's children had to marry among themselves or with their sisters, given the lack of other available people at that time. Another relevant example is the marriage of Abraham and Sarah, who was his half-sister. In Genesis 20 verse 12, it is mentioned that they shared the same father, confirming their kinship. In that historical context, marriages between close relatives, such as half-siblings, were socially accepted and often necessary to preserve the family lineage. Isaac, Abraham's son, followed a similar pattern by marrying Rebekah, his first cousin. The union between cousins was a common practice, reflecting the cultural norms of the time. Similarly, Jacob, Abraham's grandson, also married his cousins Leah and Rachel. Although these marriages may seem unusual by today's standards, they were established practices according to the historical and cultural context of that period. It is worth noting that the prohibitions against marriages between close relatives were instituted in the Mosaic Law about 2,500 years after Adam and Eve's creation. These new regulations, which were part of the covenant established with Moses, introduced stricter social and ethical rules, reflecting the cultural development and the need to preserve genetic health and maintain order in a more structured society. The biblical narrative often emphasizes the account of Cain and Abel, two of Adam and Eve's most recognized sons. Curiously, both Jewish and Christian traditions tend to downplay the stories of other lesser-mentioned characters, prioritizing narratives with greater dramatic weight. This preference sometimes obscures the existence and journeys of other sons and daughters of this first couple, leaving a gap in understanding their experiences and contributions, which were also significant in the construction of human history. Although Genesis 5 verse 4 states that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters besides Cain and Abel, the lack of specific names for these daughters leaves their stories in obscurity, while Cain and Abel take center stage in the narrative. On the other hand, it is understandable that the Bible cannot detail the life of every character. After all, it is impossible to encompass the entire complexity of events from the creation to the end of time in a single book. In this context, complementary works, such as the Book of Jubilees, offer an alternative perspective. Although not widely accepted, the Book of Jubilees seeks to fill these gaps by exploring details about lesser-mentioned characters, including Adam and Eve's daughters. These forgotten characters provide a broader perspective on the vast lineage of the original couple. However, it is crucial to emphasize that the Book of Jubilees is classified as apocryphal, which means it is not part of the official canon of either the Jewish or Christian Bible. The Book of Jubilees presents a unique approach to the events narrated in Genesis, especially those involving creation, Adam and Eve, and other Old Testament characters. Being commonly referred to as the Lesser Genesis, this name reinforces its direct connection with the events and figures described in the Book of Genesis. This apocryphal text offers a more detailed interpretation of the story, going beyond what is recorded in the Bible, including references to the names of Adam and Eve's daughters and aspects of their lives. This narrative is particularly relevant for certain Jewish and Christian communities seeking a broader understanding of significant Old Testament events. In exploring the Book of Jubilees, we find the names of Adam and Eve's daughters, Awan and Asherah, who are mentioned as the wives of Cain and Seth, respectively. In Genesis 4 verses 16 to 17, the text says, So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain made love to his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. In some Jewish traditions, Awan, also referred to as On, is identified as Cain's wife and the eldest daughter of Adam and Eve. Although her name is not recorded in the Bible, it is mentioned in apocryphal works like the Book of Jubilees. The etymological origin of her name, with possible roots in Hebrew or Phoenician, suggests meanings such as vice or power. As Cain's companion, Awan's name may symbolize the influence and strength she had in the lineage initiated by Adam and Eve's eldest son. Additionally, the meaning associated with vice could allude to the challenges and hardships that Cain and Awan faced after being exiled. After his exile, Cain met Awan, and the biblical account highlights that he founded a city, naming it after his son Enoch. The Book of Jubilees also notes this city as one of Cain's achievements after the tragic incident with Abel. When presented alongside Cain, Awan emerges as a key link in the lineage, becoming a central figure in significant events following Cain's banishment due to the murder of his brother. Although the Bible does not explicitly name Cain's wife or reveal her origin, by tracing the account in Genesis up to the point of Cain's exile and his meeting with his wife, only a few characters are mentioned, including Adam, Eve, Abel, and Seth. However, it is important to consider that by the time Cain united with Awan, the earth could have been much more populated. At this point in the story, there were likely more than just 5 individuals, including other women besides Eve. Some theories suggest that Cain's wife could have been his niece, a daughter of Seth. This idea is based on the extensive period between Cain's exile in the land of Nod and his meeting with Awan. According to some theologians, this interval may have lasted around 300 years. During this time, it is estimated that Adam and Eve had over 50 children, while Seth, in turn, may have had more than 20 descendants. One curious aspect of the early generations is the remarkable longevity of the characters who lived before the flood. These patriarchs reached impressive ages, completely challenging our current understanding of life expectancy. This becomes even clearer in the genealogies described in the book of Genesis, where figures like Adam, Seth, and Methuselah are recorded to have lived for several centuries. The long lives of these individuals offer a fascinating glimpse into the conditions and particularities of the ancient biblical period. Adam, the first man, reached the impressive age of 930 years, as recorded in Genesis 5 verse 5. His son Seth, born after Abel's death and playing a crucial role in the continuation of the lineage, lived for 912 years, according to Genesis 5 verse 8. Enosh, Adam's grandson, lived for 905 years, as documented in Genesis 5 verse 11. These examples show that in the early days of humanity, longevity was not an exception, but rather the norm. Methuselah, Noah's grandfather, is known for being the longest living person mentioned in the Bible, having lived 969 years, as stated in Genesis 5 verse 27. There are various theories to explain this exceptional longevity. One commonly proposed explanation is the idea of an almost perfect primordial environment with climatic, atmospheric, and environmental conditions that could have contributed to a longer life. According to this view, the Earth's atmosphere before the flood may have provided additional protection against harmful radiation and other factors that normally contribute to aging. Some scholars also suggest that the genetics of the early humans were more robust, allowing for a much longer life expectancy. Additionally, some biblical interpretations point to divine interventions or changes in natural laws after the flood. In Genesis 6 verse 3, God declares, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years." This statement could be understood as an intentional reduction in human longevity after the flood, which would correspond to the gradual decline in life expectancy observed in subsequent generations. After the flood, the life expectancy of biblical characters decreased significantly. For example, Abraham lived to be 175 years old, as mentioned in Genesis 25 verse 7, and Moses, a key figure in the Old Testament, reached the age of 120 years, according to Deuteronomy 34 verse 7. This gradual decline can be attributed to several factors. A common explanation is that the altered environmental conditions after the flood significantly impacted longevity. Another factor could be the gradual decline in genetic quality in subsequent generations due to intermarriages between close relatives. The decrease in longevity could also reflect changes in divine plans and human conditions. We can conclude that at the time when Cain chose to marry, there were several sisters and nieces available, making it easier for him to find a wife related by blood. This practice of marrying close relatives, as we mentioned earlier, persisted for a long time. It was only much later, with the significant growth of the population, that prohibitions against sexual relations between close relatives were established to prevent negative effects, such as the risk of genetic defects and health problems resulting from inbreeding. The Bible clearly states that all of humanity descends from Adam and Eve, and any contrary theory lacks biblical support, as expressed in Acts 17 verse 26. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. This perspective clarifies the dynamics of relationships at that time and the formation of humanity from a single original couple. Another daughter of Adam and Eve detailed in the book of Jubilees is Asherah, who is recognized as the wife of Seth, Adam and Eve's third son. Her symbolic association with the blue sky or lapis lazuli suggests heavenly purity, and her name reflects the uniqueness she represents in the narrative. As Seth's wife, Asherah played an essential role in maintaining the righteous lineage, helping to preserve the virtues and values expected in the biblical genealogy. It is important to remember that Seth was born after Abel's death. Eve believed that Seth was appointed by God to establish a new lineage in place of Abel, who was killed by Cain. According to these traditions, Asherah was initially Abel's wife, but became a widow after his death. Shortly after, she married Seth, and from this union came notable descendants. Seth is a key figure in biblical genealogy and played a significant role in continuing the righteous lineage after the tumultuous episode involving Cain. His union with Asherah resulted in contributions that shaped significant biblical events. One of Seth's children, Enosh, is particularly noteworthy. His name means frail man, and he is recognized as the first to develop the practice of calling on the name of the Lord, establishing a spiritual connection that would become central in later religious traditions. In addition to Enosh, another notable figure in this lineage is Enoch, a descendant of Seth, known for his remarkable closeness to God, described as walking with God. According to the biblical account, Enoch led a life marked by righteousness and direct communion with the Creator, representing a unique example of devotion that transcended his time. As a result of his dedication, Enoch was one of the few biblical figures who did not experience death, as he was taken by God. One of the most significant figures from Seth's lineage is Noah, the righteous man chosen by God to build the ark before the great flood. Noah, the son of Lamech and grandson of Seth, was selected to preserve humanity and various species of animals during the global cataclysm. His faith and obedience, as recorded in the flood narrative, highlight the importance of Seth's lineage in fulfilling God's plans for humanity's salvation. Each individual in this lineage played a vital role in building human legacy and preserving faith and righteousness amid the challenges faced by their generations. Religious traditions, especially when exploring the lineages of Cain and Awan in contrast with Seth and Asherah, reveal an intriguing duality in human nature, expressed through moral and spiritual choices. Cain, as the firstborn of Adam and Eve, embodies a path marked by choices that reflect human flaws, while Seth and Asherah's lineage presents a narrative of moral and spiritual choices more aligned with divine will. despite the significant differences between these two lineages, both hold their relevance and represent the intrinsic duality of human nature, where spiritual and moral choices shape the course of future generations. It is important to emphasize once again that the Book of Jubilees is classified as apocryphal, meaning it is not officially accepted by the main religious traditions, whether Jewish or Christian. All these aspects concerning Adam and Eve's daughters can vary according to different interpretations and belief systems. The Bible is revered as a sacred book, and its central purpose is to convey essential messages about faith and our relationship with God. Instead of detailing the history of every person who ever lived, its focus is on highlighting fundamental lessons and teachings for our spiritual and moral lives. God uses the scriptures to teach us what is most crucial: His love, His justice, and the way He wants us to live. God uses the Bible to reveal what is most essential: His love, His justice, and the way He desires us to live. It is fundamental to understand that a book like the Bible could not encompass everything about history or the life of every character. The Bible functions as a guide, providing the necessary information for us to know God and follow His teachings. It helps us understand what is crucial for our existence and our relationship with Him, without attempting to cover every detail of history or life. God's plans are perfect, but they are also beyond our full comprehension. The Bible offers us a glimpse of His love and justice, without revealing all the details of His divine purposes. In Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9 it is stated, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This reminds us that there are aspects of God's plans that are beyond our understanding. He does not expect us to grasp everything. Instead, He wants us to trust in Him and seek His love and guidance. The Bible is a gift meant to help us know God better and live according to His principles, even if not all details are revealed to us. Now, I would like to hear your opinion. Do you believe in the information presented in the Book of Jubilees, even though it is considered an apocryphal text? Who do you think was Cain's wife? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts with us. Your opinion is essential to us. Thank you for watching, take care, and may God bless you. Having explored the possible theories about the origin of Cain's wife, it is essential to remember that the story of Cain and Abel is central to the biblical narrative for several reasons. It addresses complex issues such as envy, sin, repentance, and the consequences of human choices. Additionally, it offers us valuable lessons about the relationship between humans and God and how our actions can impact not only our lives, but also the course of history. Although the mystery about the origin of Cain's wife remains a topic of debate, the purpose of the biblical narrative is to convey moral and spiritual lessons rather than to provide a detailed genealogy of each character. Cain's decision, driven by jealousy and resentment, to commit the first recorded murder marked a pivotal moment in human history, introducing a new dimension of sin and suffering into the world. This narrative also reminds us of God's justice and mercy, as even in the face of Cain's sin, God chose to protect him with a mark, demonstrating that vengeance should not be the response to a brother's wrongdoing. The Bible, with its stories of imperfect characters and their difficult choices, invites us to reflect on our own lives and recognize our limitations and failures while seeking to draw closer to God. Regardless of the theological perspective or historical interpretation you choose to follow, the important thing is to understand that the essence of these stories is to reveal the relationship between humans and God and the principles that should guide our lives. The story of Cain and Abel goes beyond mere historical figures. It serves as a mirror for our own challenges in dealing with emotions, decisions, and consequences. The question about the identity of Cain's wife invites us to a deeper reflection on how we approach the biblical narrative and what it means for our faith. Regardless of beliefs about apocryphal texts or genealogies, the essence of the biblical account lies in how it calls us to seek wisdom, compassion, and a life that honors God's principles. If you have additional questions or would like to explore any other aspect of this story, feel free to share your doubts. Your journey of discovery is valuable, and it is a privilege to be part of it. Until the next video, may God bless you and your family. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the biblical events and the possible interpretations surrounding the narrative of Cain and Abel. Through all these details, we realize that the Bible is a rich source of stories that carry deeper meanings than what appears on the surface. Each account, each character, and each line reveals something about human nature, morality, sin, and redemption. If you have additional questions or would like to explore any other aspect of this story, feel free to share your doubts. Your journey of discovery is valuable, and it is a privilege to be part of it. Until the next video, may God bless you and your family.